Dwelling of Thought. Neville Goddard, Emmet Fox, and Prentice Mulford. Handful of quotes from each of them to discuss this concept of dwelling of thought. The word dwelling means home. Reference to this context, we are speaking of the home of mind. What is within our mind? What do we dwell upon, as in what thoughts do we live in our mind? Will externalize as the people, environment, circumstance, and information to externalize and reveal what is within thought. Dwelling upon the thoughts that creates the impression on the subconscious mind to externalize accordingly. Much of our thoughts are thoughts subconsciously from our past. They are thoughts that have been instilled and impressed upon through past experiences, through past dwelling, as in living in the thoughts of the past, and in our past living in those thoughts for extended periods of time. The key is the recognition that when we experience five sensory data in the outer world, much of it is interpreted from the thoughts that we dwell upon. And the interpretation of the five sensory data is based on past information or past dwelling of thoughts that have been assimilated as beliefs. What was once assumption, externalized as fact, becomes a belief. What we believe in the mind and dwell upon externalizes as fact in the outer world. Neville says, everyone has such a dweller on his threshold of thoughts, which is fed by imagining something unlovely. And also everyone has the complementary side as glorious, angelic being whose beauty is beyond measure. She is the personification of every lovely imaginal act the individual has ever committed. One day they will be together. We will be together in the externalization of the thoughts that we dwell upon, whether they be unlovely or lovely. The key is the recognition that we have a choice to have a degree of presence and awareness as we experience thought, as we begin to emotionalize with thought, and question ourselves and ask ourselves, is this thought related to our definite chief aim? Is it related to an outcome? Is it related to an ideal state of consciousness? Or is it related to something from our past, which was part of our past identity? We have our current self-image, and we are in the process of realizing and internalizing and expressing from our higher self. And this is a continuum. It continues to evolve as we continue to evolve, as our consciousness evolves. However, there may be programming or thoughts from our past that express themselves in our imagination from our subconscious mind to reveal what is in our subconscious mind so that we can release the dwelling of those thoughts. Everything you can think of is present now. You cannot conceive of something that is not already worked out in detail, but it is a shadow if you do not dwell in it. What are we dwelling in? What thoughts do we live in? What are the houses, which is our thoughts, that we inhabit? And why do we inhabit those thoughts? Well, the thoughts can either be thought related to the outcome or the definite chief aim, in harmony, or thoughts of harmony, or they could be thoughts of inharmony and unrelated to the definite chief aim, or disempowering in nature based on past programming and past identity. We have the ability to consciously reflect upon and release the identification of thought or the dwelling of thought based on past identity by evolving our self-image. Perhaps an affirmation like this can be beneficial for you. I realize that every day I am on the journey of impressing my higher self upon my subconscious mind. I realize that my subconscious mind is expressing as people, environment, circumstance, and information in the outer world to reveal the degree of impression I have of my higher self. The continuum of life is the realization of the higher self, and as I dwell in the image and vividness of my higher self, it impresses on my subconscious mind and continues to externalize more so each day. He says, everything you can think of is now present, as in we are thinking of and impressing our higher self, the ideal version or what we aspire to be that is in correlation and relation to our definite chief aim on our subconscious mind and have it externalize now in the present. This is what it means to dwell in the end. Much dwelling has been brought forth from past subconscious programming. Although we can consciously dwell, we realize that dwelling is really done from a place of internal expression of what is within our subconscious mind. So thus, we consciously and subconsciously encourage the dwelling of the thought that is in relation to our definite chief aim or the desired outcome. And this is what Neville says when he means living in the end. He says, always go to the end, dwell in the end, and you will hurt no one. How we have created many circumstances or outcomes in our past is based on how we believe reality to work. If we believe in the outcome and dwell in the outcome, then sub-beliefs and assumptions are assimilated along the journey that are in alignment and in harmony with bringing forth the definite chief aim or the outcome in the most harmonious way. We call this infinite intelligence. We thought that we could bring upon our definite chief aim or our outcome in our past based on certain beliefs and assumptions. While this may be true, there are infinite ways of bringing forth our desired outcome if we live in the end. We bridge the gap through what Neville calls the bridge of incidence. By dwelling in the end and living in the end in the mind through thought, it is externalized as harmonious bridge of incidence, people, environment, circumstance, and information to create the end. Emmet Fox says, you must not under any pretense allow your mind to dwell on any thought that is not positive, constructive, optimistic, and kind. What you do unto yourself in thought is revealed in the outer world in the externalization of the consciousness that is experienced while we rise into the thought. Consciousness is our reality, and all that we are aware of is within our consciousness. And consciousness is facilitated in the mind by the thoughts that we dwell upon. When we dwell upon positive, constructive, optimistic, kind, and empowering thoughts in relation to our desired outcome, we bring upon the circumstances in the outer world, people, environment, and information, and interpretation of the five sensory data from the perspective of the thought dwelled upon to externalize accordingly as we realize the end result. This is to also say, as Neville puts it, dwell in the end and you will hurt no one. Because if you dwell in the end, and the end is of positive, constructive, optimistic, and kind, then the journey is going to be in relation to the dwelling of the end, as in the journey will be one of positive, constructive, optimistic, and kind. Or the bridge of incidence, or the externalization of the dwelling through the bridge of incidence will be positive, constructive, optimistic, and kind. He says to dwell upon negative things, no matter what the pretext, is to manufacture still more trouble. To turn away from evil and realize God instead to improve and liberate yourself to help the world. The golden key is the key to freedom. The golden key is the thought that opens up the outcome or the lock, which is containing the treasure, which is the outcome, the desired outcome. The golden key really is the thought. And what we dwell upon is the golden key. which is harmonious thoughts, the end result thought, and all that is related to the end result. Five sensory data might cause us to express certain kinds of emotions, to bring to the surface certain kinds of emotions that are inharmonious and are related to our past. The reason why this happens is so that we can inventory these emotions and realize that this emotional expression of inharmony is based on past programming. And we can release these past programming by using various subconscious mind modalities, some of which I'll share in the links in the description. By releasing the identification of the five sensory data and association by meaning, beliefs, and assumptions from past, we release it out of consciousness, and we are less likely to dwell upon those thoughts, and instead identify with the thoughts of positive, constructive, optimistic, and kind, and related, as far as empowerment goes, to our definite chief aim. You choose your life. That is to say, you choose all the conditions of your life when you choose the thoughts upon which you allow your mind to dwell. Thoughts externalize as behaviors, emotions, and further thoughts, and outer world circumstance, people, environment, and information to reveal the reflection of the thought. The more we dwell upon a specific thought, the more we will see itself revealed in the outer world. Thought is the real causative force in life, and there is no other. You cannot have one kind of mind and another kind of environment. Thus, we can cross-reference our environment based on current thought and past thought. And as we change our thoughts about the outer world and ourselves and others, we begin to externalize it as harmonious environment to reflect. Life is a state of consciousness. Okay? Life is a state of consciousness. And there are infinite levels of consciousness. You must not allow yourself to dwell for a single moment on any kind of negative thought. To dwell on a negative thought is to go into the consciousness that represents the negative thought. And once we identify with that consciousness that affirms that negative thought, what happens is we begin to impress our subconscious mind and construct our self-image, our identity, from that perspective, which is not in alignment with our higher self. Our higher self is aligned with all things possible and the belief that you can create what you desire and that what you desire is for you. What is contained within your higher self is for you. It is made for you to create and to dwell upon so that you can receive the higher self and impress it on the subconscious mind and behave, emotionalize, and think and externalize accordingly to reflect the higher self, which contains the desired outcome. What is not in alignment with the higher self is the negative thought, because the higher self is what you aspire to be, and that's a positive thought. And contained within the higher self is the complete of what you desire, not just in part or what you are aware that you desire right now, but all future definite chief aims. Once you make a commitment to bring forth a definite chief aim and remain persistent in the thoughts related to bringing forth your definite chief aim, you are further impressing your higher self on your subconscious mind. As you bring forth your definite chief aim, once your definite chief aim has been brought forth, you have now identified more so with your higher self. Once identified with your higher self to that degree, you will reveal further definite chief aims. And as you repeat this process again and again and again, you'll find yourself dwelling upon the thoughts related to the higher self and the current self, which has been a continuum of impression of the higher self, to dwell in then the related thoughts of positive, abundance, constructive, and kind. Prentice Mulford says, "If you dwell a great deal on your own faults, you will by the same laws attract more and more of their thought current, and so increase those faults. It is enough that you recognize in yourself those faults." How do we recognize past programming that we had learned from past experiences? Through how we emotionally react to people, environment, circumstance, and information that presents itself, 5 sensory data, and also what is revealed in the mind's eye as we think about it. What we think about can translate to what we dwell upon. We can dwell upon reactiveness to past programming, or we can dwell upon proactiveness related to our definite chief aim or our outcome. The reactiveness reveals to us past elements of character that are not in harmony or related to the higher self. We call these faults. When these faults are experienced through how we react to outer world conditions, people, environment, circumstance, and information, we can write these elements down and evolve them through self-talk. I did a discussion a few videos ago on how to evolve your thinking, how to reprogram your subconscious mind, which is to bring it into in alignment with your higher self, utilizing self-talk. The truth is this: what we dwell upon is a form of self-talk. We are communicating with ourselves. We are further encouraging the thoughts through conversations with ourselves. Thus, we can make a conscious decision to have a conversation with our higher self via our inner voice through self-talk. And what is revealed in the outer world, the so-called faults, are based on past programming that we can release and further identify with and dwell upon the thoughts that are related to our higher self, which contains our definite chief aim, and the definite chief aim related thoughts are one of empowerment, positivity, can-do, optimistic, and kind, because they evoke the sensations as we think about our definite chief aim, and thus dwell upon the definite chief aim and what is related and in harmony with the definite chief aim to impress our subconscious mind and externalize accordingly. He says, unreasoning prejudices are bred out of the continual living in the past. Reactivity to the outer world is a revelation of what we are dwelling upon subconsciously related to our past. Reactivity, when we feel disempowered, negative, doubtful, fearful, causes us to reveal what is within our past. If we identify it and begin to dwell and live in those past aspects of our identity, current identity, then we further create again, and again those elements based on past programming that is in our current identity. However, if we bring it to surface and evolve the programming within using a subconscious mind modality through self-talk or affirmation or switching the environment around and evolving the programming within, we'll notice that we are less reactive. So perhaps reactivity to the same circumstance, which is a revelation of what we have once been dwelling upon or currently dwelling upon, might not go away overnight or instantaneously. It may or may not. But what we can do is ensure that we find ourselves less reactive to the same 5 sensory data through conscious, mindful practice and realization that the identification with that particular element through the emotional reactivity is based on past programming, and we have the power within to change that programming so we feel less and less reactive. Whatever the mind is set upon, or whatever it keeps most in view, that it is bringing to it, and the continual thought or imagining must at least take form and shape in the world of seen and tangible things. So whatever the mind is set upon, in other words, dwelling upon, reveals more so the same element in people, environment, and circumstance and information in the outer world. The outer world is a reflection of the inner world. We will see in the outer world, we will bias what is in the outer world to what we dwell upon in the inner world. And then the unseen becomes seen. If what we see is not in alignment or not in harmony to our definite chief aim or our desired outcome, we have the ability then to reflect upon the understanding that this is found, or the source, the cause is found within consciousness. And what we want to do is release it and eventually exclude it out of consciousness. Now, because many of us have been dwelling upon the same thought that seems to bind us to the outer world, the key word is seems to bind us to the outer world through reactivity, a constant practice of the subconscious mind modalities are important so that we can release ourselves more and more so each day from the inner world grip of reactivity to that outer world circumstance that continuously creates it again and again and again. And as we release this grip through affirmation, through self-talk, through subconscious mind modalities, we'll find ourselves less reactive and less reactive. And what we'll then identify with or dwell in is in the thought that is in harmony and relation to our ideal outcome or our definite chief aim, which are, again, thoughts that are constructive, positive, optimistic, and kind. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.